Are you seeing a lot of Christian women, especially, who have been somehow taught or trained that these are things that we shouldn't talk about, that we shouldn't acknowledge, that we shouldn't ask for help on? What are you seeing?
I think it's a mixture.
Okay.
I have seen in faith communities specifically that cover it with a hope and a prayer. I love that you said that. Seems to be a default because if for some reason you have fear or for some reason you have anxiety, then maybe you don't trust the Lord enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so that seems to be the underlying theology, like have more faith. I received a text message from somebody the other day. A friend was like, it's interesting to me that you struggle with anxiety so much because you have so much faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to process that for a moment because wherever in the Bible does it says you won't have fear, you won't have anxiety. Now it says do not be afraid,
Right.
but it doesn't say you won't experience it. Like it's not going to try to come at you. And that is a huge thing that I think we could do better in faith communities, that we are going to experience fear.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to experience anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to experience shame.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are going to happen. What we do with them then is what matters and what changes everything.
Hi, friends. Welcome to the Holy Shift Show. I'm your host, Christine Crawford, and I'm so glad you're here. This podcast is for anyone willing to be curious, dig deep, and be surprised by God. Well, we are well into season 3, which is our Draw Near, Dwell Well series. And it's all about overcoming overwhelm and learning to live healed and whole. And to do that, we're exploring soul care and spiritual formation practices that help us live more deeply connected with God, ourselves, and others. It's been an amazing series, and I've really been looking forward to today's topic because today we're talking about stewarding our mental and emotional health. Now, this will be a great follow-up episode to episode 8 in the series on stewarding our relational health and safety. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I would encourage you to go and do so. I'm expecting that this episode and that episode are going to be the ones that you guys connect with the most, which frankly breaks my heart because it means that so many of you have struggled or are struggling with stewarding your relational health and or emotional health. That means that so many of you are really hurting in your friendships or your family dynamics or even your marriages and romantic relationships. And also it means that the fallout has been that your mental and emotional health has suffered. The truth is that if we want to overcome overwhelm and learn to live healed and whole, we need to become wise stewards of both our relational health and our mental and emotional health. So how can we draw near and dwell well in this area? Well, we go really deep into this topic in the online course and in spiritual mentoring. So if you feel like you need that, please check out those options. But today, what we're going to do on the podcast is I'm just going to share some thoughts that I have, and then we're going to bring on a guest who's going to share her story and what she has learned about the importance of stewarding her mental and emotional health. And before we get started, I just want to say, just like I said on the last episode, that some of you may feel like you're doing really well in this department. And if that's the case, I am so happy for you. But I guarantee you that you have friends and family that are struggling here, and I'm hoping that this episode will help equip you to support them and encourage them as they navigate this. And then I also know from my own experience and from talking to so many of you that many of us really would like to learn how to better steward our mental and emotional health. But maybe you're like me and you don't know where to start or what that's supposed to look like, because maybe, like me, you were taught to shelve all of your needs and spiritually bypass all of your emotions. I see this a lot in some of the Christian circles that I've run in and a lot in the women that I speak with. But I want to remind us all that this is not God's heart for us, and that pursuing our emotional health and flourishing is an integral part of soul stewardship. We all have stories and struggles, and part of navigating those well is stewarding our emotions. Now, notice I said stewarding. I didn't say ignoring our emotions, stepping our emotions, denying them, squashing them, and then shaming ourselves for having them. We were created to have emotions, even the weird and scary ones. And I've noticed that we have a tendency to automatically label the uncomfortable ones as weird and scary, sometimes even as sinful. Now, the truth is, our emotions do make us uncomfortable sometimes. When we feel them, we're uncomfortable, and sometimes when we feel them, we make other people uncomfortable. Our emotions really can be inconvenient, especially the ones that we have labeled as negative, specifically anger and sorrow. But I want to point out that neither of those emotions are necessarily sinful, even though so many of us, especially as women, have been taught otherwise. Anger is not necessarily a sin. In the Old Testament, we see God express anger. In the New Testament, we see Jesus express anger, and they are without sin. Now, we are told not to sin in our anger. We are instructed not to give the enemy a foothold or let hatred harden our hearts. But we are never told never to be angry. Anger can be righteous. It is the right and righteous response to injustice. And God never shames us for being angry at injustice. In fact, that's often how God accomplishes his justice in the world, by riling us up over what breaks his heart. Also, sadness, sorrow, grief, these things are not sin. Again, the Bible tells us that God was grieved. We see Jesus weep in the scriptures. Grief and lament are appropriate responses to death, loss, and brokenness. And we are never ashamed for lamenting, for grieving, for weeping. Instead, we're actually told that we're blessed when we mourn, and that God weeps with us and draws near, promising to comfort us in our hurt. Now, back in episode 7 of this series, I actually had my therapist come on and talk about how we can navigate some of these more difficult emotions. And in that episode, I shared a poem, and in that poem, I shared a moment in which God reminded me we never have to be sorry for being sad. Emotions like this, they're just indications that something is broken in us and others in this world. And they're also invitations from the one who will put it all right again. And when we draw near to God and dwell well in our emotions, we will find comfort, peace, hope, and redemption. Now, also in that episode with Crystal, we use a car analogy in order to help us kind of talk about and connect with some of these more difficult emotions. You don't have to have listened to that episode to connect with this one. I'm kind of going to explain the analogy as we go, but that is another good episode to listen to if you get a chance. And so I want us all to picture ourselves in a car. And the thing about this car is that sometimes we don't know where to put our emotions in the car. Some of us have been letting our emotions drive the car, and that hasn't gone so well for us. And then others of us have shoved our emotions in the trunk and locked it up tight. Also, not a good idea. We don't want our emotions driving the car because, let's face it, sometimes our emotions are temper tantrum throwing 2-year-olds that want their own way and probably shouldn't be behind the wheel of our lives. But locking them in the trunk isn't a good idea either. So where do we put them? I heard somewhere, I don't remember where, that the best thing to do is to buckle them safely in the back seat, where they're near enough that we can hear them and attend to them, but they're neither in charge nor neglected. And that makes sense. In fact, Crystal talks about our emotions just being information, just being the lights that light up on our car dashboard, indicating what's going on under the hood. So things will light up when they need attention or repair, whether that be our bodies, our minds, our hearts, our needs, our relationships. And we would do well to heed the warnings, because if we just keep revving our engines, we will hit the burnout wall like crash test dummies. Ask me how I know. And for me, it wasn't just that I was going too fast, though I was. And it wasn't just that I was running on empty, though I was. My situation, my dashboard was trying to tell me that there were fuses loose in my home and marriage, and it was wreaking havoc on my transmission and engine. I don't know if that's mechanically correct, but it is emotionally accurate to say that when we just keep driving a malfunctioning vehicle, we're headed for a major breakdown. And that makes sense. For those of you who have read or at least heard of a book called The Body Keeps the Score, or read any of the more current articles and studies that have come out, science has long suspected and now well proven that trauma and neglect and abuse, they wreak havoc on our minds and bodies. So do high levels of stress, anxiety, and depression. Recent studies from Harvard and others link things like toxic relationships, anxiety, and depression to things like chronic pain, inflammation, adrenal dysfunction, immune disorders, and even certain types of cancer. The body does indeed keep the score. And being in a near constant state of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn poisons our finely tuned bodies and brains. Think about it. If we're swimming in a cesspool of emotional dysfunction or the dynamics of our relationships are slow dripping venom into our bloodstream, we're going to get sick. I did. My dashboard was lighting up with all of the warning lights, but because I didn't know what to do about them and I was too afraid and ashamed to ask for help, I just kept going. And then my body started shutting down. Again, with the car analogy, for me, first, it was just kind of the optional stuff like the radio or the AC. So I was uncomfortable, but I was at least still moving. Then it spread to the more major components. I started having panic attacks. I stopped sleeping and stopped laughing, but I couldn't stop crying. And little Miss Type A, who had always prided herself on getting things done fast and well, suddenly developed a very liberal theology on wearing pajamas in public. I had to choose to hit the brakes, to pull off the road that I had been traveling alone and into a good, godly mechanic's garage. And when I let the experts take a peek under the hood, when I opened myself to good, godly community and counsel, I was able to receive God's guidance. And that's when God revealed to me that in certain situations, at least in mine, sometimes staying safe and sane means leaving. And as heartbreaking as that realization was, and as challenging as that healing has been and continues to be, I at least now get to live in love and truth, in freedom and dignity. And I'm learning how to care for my own needs, my own health, and my own emotions. But it's all new to me because I was always shamed for having my emotions, much less trying to steward them. And I had a lot of emotions to work through. I still do. Like I've said several times in this series, I am practicing at practicing these spiritual practices, and stewarding our emotional health is indeed a spiritual practice. I had a lot of big feelings, a lot of grief from my divorce, from having to acknowledge some dynamics in my family, from moving, from giving up a career, from struggling with my health, from basically letting a dream die and the loss of the life I thought I'd be living. And it felt like every time I would gain a little ground, kind of get my feet under me, some other loss would come along and knock me down again. In fact, this episode will air in the fall, but I am recording this toward the end of July. And if you think back to what was going on in July in Texas, you might remember the huge floods that we had in Central Texas, especially in Kerrville, which happens to be where I live. Now, the devastation is indescribable, and I won't take us down that road, but my guest and I had to reschedule a couple of times just because I didn't want to snot cry all over you guys in this episode. And we all know life continues to grieve us. Life continues to challenge us. And sometimes we have to take a break and do the things that we know will help us grieve and grieve well. Now, I don't know your story, so I don't know your exact solutions. I don't know what's lighting up on your dashboard right now, but this series is aimed at helping us create some space to pay attention to that and to remind us that we have permission to care about that, to care about ourselves. That is part of soul stewardship. So if you can connect with some of what I'm saying today, this would be a great time for you to find a wise mechanic, so to speak. And if you've been led to believe that asking for help with your mental or emotional well-being somehow discredits or disappoints God, that's a lie. I know back when I first started hinting around out loud that I was hurting and might need some help, I actually had someone from my old church, in fact, tell me that when it came to my marriage and my emotions, going to counseling or asking for help was unnecessary and unbiblical. That if I just prayed hard enough, that God would miraculously change both circumstances because God was my plenty. Well, I love prayer, and I believe with all my heart that God is indeed our plenty. But sometimes He provides His plenty through His people. And we don't tell folks with cancer to just pray and not seek medical treatment. So why are we telling people with sick marriages and alien emotions to tough it out alone? It's dangerous to minimize our mental health. It's dangerous to ignore the warning signs of anxiety, depression, and burnout. And it's especially dangerous to try to tough all those things out alone. So I want you to hear me say, you are not alone in this. You are not. The statistics are staggering. So there's that. But as more and more women gather the courage to seek out support and bravely share their stories, the more healing happens in this world. So I hope that you will choose to seek support, to share your story, and to steward your mental and emotional health. And today we're going to visit with someone who has modeled that so well. We are going to visit with Christy Boulware, who quite unintentionally became an expert on the importance of stewarding her mental and emotional health when she was diagnosed with severe panic and anxiety disorder. Christy shares her story in her book called Nervous Breakthrough, and I've got more information about that on the blog and the show notes, and I'm going to be giving away a copy on Instagram. But that book was very raw and very helpful. Christy is a women's ministry leader. She founded and leads the not-for-profit organization Fearless Unite, and she has a deep desire to set as many people free from the chains of fear and anxiety as possible. So I'm very excited to introduce you to her and chat with her today. And it's my hope that this episode and this season will continue to serve as an opportunity for us all to shift our perspective on Jesus and learn to draw near and dwell well. So listen in and join us as we explore the upside-down kingdom of God as the right way forward in faith and life. Christy, I am so excited to have you on the show. I read your book some time ago, and then I reread it very recently for some really real reasons. And I am super excited to have you on, not because I think this is going to be a super fun and giggly conversation, but because I think that this will be helpful. I hope it will be helpful and encouraging to a lot of people listening who have struggled or are struggling or just wanting to learn how to better steward their mental and emotional health. So thank you for joining us today as the expert in this area.
Christine, there are moments when you just know the Lord is going to show up and he's going to do something really powerful. And that is the holy anticipation that I have right now. I think true, authentic, vulnerable conversations about our mental health are rare. And I think that you have a heart to talk about this stuff open and honestly, not in a perfect, perfected performance bow, but just in a way where we can be honest. I just deeply feel like that's going to happen today. So thank you for trusting me with your audience, and thank you for having me on today.
Yeah. Well, and let's start with some honesty. And the honesty is we rescheduled this a couple times. We've both been walking through some really, really hard things. I mentioned in the intro that we are recording this just a couple weeks after the big floods here in Texas. And I live in Kerrville, where the worst of it hit. And, you and I have both these are things that we're practicing. You are the expert, but you're the expert kind of trial by fire expertise. You know about this because you have suffered in this area and you have worked really hard toward healing in this area. So can you talk a little bit about what it's like to be leading women in this and also continuing to learn and walk with the Lord and heal in this area?
I was a big medical sales rep, workaholic, living my best life, and I found myself hospitalized after a suicidal ideation that was incredibly dark. And I remember just asking myself, after I'd been pinned with the diagnosis from the doctor that says you have severe panic and anxiety disorder, thinking, how did I get here?
Mm-hmm.
How does one get a diagnosis of severe panic and anxiety disorder and deal with the hell that I was walking through of back-to-back panic attacks? Anyone that's listening that has had a panic attack before, you know it's from the pits of hell.
Mm-hmm.
And it literally feels like you're fighting for your life in those moments. And the anxiety I was experiencing at that time was so bad that I was in fight or flight, and I was stuck in fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when people say I've had a nervous breakdown, literally my body was shutting down.
Yeah.
And it was stuck in fight or flight. So no matter how much I wanted to get out of it, I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was stuck in back-to-back panic attacks for 3 weeks. And it was the most hellacious, disturbing, awful experience I've ever experienced in my entire life. That experience, however, led me to Jesus. So up until that time, I was just like a CEO Christian, Christmas, Easter only. I believed in God. I didn't need God. I was Superwoman. And that experience alone brought me to my Savior. And so I made a little promise with the Lord that I didn't know I was doing at the time. I'll tell you that much, that if he would get me out of this hell, that I would promise to dedicate my life to him. I made do on that promise. And now I'm speaking, teaching, writing on everything mental health related to just bring some light to the darkness of that world.
Well, and you do that. I really appreciated your book, and I really appreciated, it's raw and it's honest. And I thank you for doing that, because that takes some courage, especially in a world that still kind of misunderstands God's heart for us in this area. And I wondered if you could speak to maybe ways that you think that some of us might be getting the concept of stewarding our emotional health upside down.
This is such a beautiful question. I think for me, I am starting to view my smoke alarms, which are moments of anxiety and fear that I call smoke alarms, as blessings. And when the smoke alarm goes off, it is a moment to stop with Jesus and say, where am I off base with you, Lord? What do I have going on that you want to help heal me? You want to grow? You want to mature me? I think we run from our anxiety. We run from our fear. We hide. We isolate. I mean, we do just a lot of different things. For me, it's stuff. I'm good. I'm a workaholic. I'm a type A personality. I can get it done. I can show up. I can do it all. And so I cover it up by that, right? But the reality is, if I would just stop and go, whew, I got a smoke alarm going off right now, because truly, Christine, if my smoke alarm, my physical smoke alarm in my home would go off during our interview, I couldn't just barrel through it. I would have to say, Christine, hold on, we got to figure this out. It would interrupt the audio. It would just, why don't we look at these natural smoke alarms that the Lord allows us to have through our emotional health? I feel anxious right now. I feel afraid right now. I feel depressed right now. Why don't we stop and go beep, beep, beep? Let's take a look at this and say, thank you, Jesus. You're allowing me to feel these things right now. It means I've got some work to do. But a lot of us, first of all, don't want to go there. We don't want to deal with the junk that we've got stuffed or that we're ignoring or that we're running from, because it's hard work. Let's just be honest. It is hard work.
It's brutal.
It's brutal. It is. And so it's easier just to keep on keeping on. But the reality is it's going to catch up with us at some point. I like to use the Jack in the Box analogy. Remember that old silly kind of creepy toy that's like, and then it like pops out, pop goes the weasel. And if we keep doing that, we're going to pop at some point. And that nervous breakdown for me with the diagnosis of severe panic anxiety disorder was a lifetime of stuffing. And I finally popped. And it's coming for all of us. And I don't say that in a scary way. I say that in life is hard.
Yeah.
And God says, in this world, you will have troubles, tribulations, conflicts, a lack of, these things are going to happen, but take heart because I've overcome the world. But what he's not saying is just ignore it. Just pretend it's not there. Don't deal with it. Don't feel it. Don't understand. Those are the things that I feel like we are misunderstanding with our mental health. What if we looked at our anxiety and our fear and depression and loneliness and weariness as smoke alarms, as an invitation to sit with Jesus and grow and mature and work through it?
Yes, that's so good. That's so good. And my therapist and I work on this a lot because I am afraid of big feelings. So I'm an Enneagram 4. So whatever feelings there are, I feel like I feel them like
a million times more.
Yeah, it's a thing. It's always been a thing. It's a thing. And so I will have anxiety about my anxiety, because I'm afraid of being overwhelmed by the feelings. The feelings do feel overwhelming. Some of the grief and the trauma work I've been walking through, it's overwhelming. Sometimes I had asked a friend to pray for me this morning. I said, it feels like there's an anvil on my chest again. There are days that the grief wells up and feels like it's sucking me under. So that can be scary. when I talk to my therapist, we, like you say, smoke alarms, and we talk about like a car dashboard and it lighting up, and those are indicators that something is wrong. And it is an invitation. It's an invitation to draw near and dwell well, to see what's going on. But I think for so many of us, and tell me if this is true for you, or if you see a lot of this in all the work that you do, so many of us have a lot of shame about those emotions, or we have been taught, even in Christian circles, not to feel those things, or to spiritually bypass all of those things and like slap a hope and a prayer on it and keep going. And we're ungrateful or sinful if we have these big, scary emotions. And so we stuff them. I always say, like, the devil does his best dirty work in the dark. So when we shove all that down in the basement where it's dark, it gets toxic and it gets moldy and it takes over the house. And so for you, and for me, we got sick. We got sick because apparently we're not supposed to live in fight or flight perpetually. And sounds like your coping mechanism is the same as mine. Like, let's get busy, let's do some stuff, let's accomplish some stuff, let's prove our value. And then when you get sick and you lose that, you are faced with not only like what just happened and dealing with the grief or the sorrow or, the depression and the anxiety. You are stuck in a place where you're like, who am I? What is my identity really in? What is my hope really in? If I have built a whole life on what I can achieve, and right now I can achieve nothing. I can achieve nothing. So I wonder, in the work that you do and in your experience, are you seeing a lot of Christian women, especially, who have been somehow taught or trained that these are things that we shouldn't talk about, that we shouldn't acknowledge, that we shouldn't ask for help on? What are you seeing?
I think it's a mixture.
Okay.
I have seen in faith communities specifically that cover it with a hope and a prayer. I love that you said that. Seems to be a default, because if for some reason you have fear or for some reason you have anxiety, then maybe you don't trust the Lord enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so that seems to be the underlying theology, like, have more faith. I received a text message from somebody the other day. A friend was like, it's interesting to me that you struggle with anxiety so much because you have so much faith.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to process that for a moment, because wherever in the Bible does it says you won't have fear, you won't have anxiety.
Yeah.
Now, it says do not be afraid,
Right.
but it doesn't say you won't experience it. Like,
Yeah.
it's not going to try to come at you. And that is a huge thing that I think we could do better in faith communities, that we are going to experience fear.
Mm-hmm.
We are going to experience anxiety. We
Mm-hmm.
are going to experience shame.
Mm-hmm.
Those things are going to happen. What we do with them then is what matters and what changes everything. And I also, you correct me if you feel like I'm wrong here, but like, I think pastors in general aren't taught how to love their congregation well with people that are struggling with anxiety and depression.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the rub is the way that the Christian community versus the way, like, let's say the clinical community comes at things is very different.
Mm-hmm.
So when those worlds collide, they're almost competing against each other.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what if the clinical community and the Christian community came together and we worked together holistically to deal with our mental health, body, soul, and spirit?
Mm-hmm.
When we separate out these areas, that's when I think we don't get well. It wasn't until I mixed the medication. I don't mean mixing medication, but I mean when I took medication, I went to a Christian counselor and I worked on my spiritual life and my physical well-being. When I was working on all of those things, did I really start to see the needle moving towards true peace and contentment in my life? And I think as a society as a whole, we separate all these parts out of our life, and it's not good. It is not good. In fact, I have a dream of opening up a soul center someday where all of those parties come together and we treat the person as body, soul, and spirit.
Yes.
And that would change everything.
It would. It so would. And, the premise behind Draw Near and Dwell Well is we've been instructed to love the Lord with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And the Lord doesn't separate those out in his commands. And Jesus didn't separate those things out when he was here incarnationally modeling what it
Right.
is, to seek the Father and to seek the kingdom. And so I don't know where along the way we decided to divide those things out, to pit body and soul against each other. We are whole beings. These parts are all integrated within us. God made us that way. And yet for some reason, we've, just kind of made these like tight little boxes and categories and said that they can't work together. And maybe it's just because, pastors typically aren't going to be great pastors and also great psychiatrists. We don't see a lot of crossover in these things. So maybe just the way the leaders in these different categories have been taught, if they don't know the answers in the other categories, maybe they just don't really know how to work together. But like you, I had to get okay with tending to all the parts of me because I really thought, in fact, the first time I said to to a Christian person out loud, like a leader, that I thought I needed help, that I thought I was experiencing some anxiety, that I thought something was really, really wrong with my marriage, that it wasn't just hard, that it went beyond that. I was shamed, and I was told, like, if I just had enough faith and if I just prayed hard enough, he would, change my husband's heart. He would make me not afraid anymore. And that kept me hiding for a lot longer and increased my suffering. And the truth of the matter is, like, God a lot of times does his work through his people. And, when we've got medical experts and we've got psychiatrists and psychologists and counselors and, pastors, like all of these people are doing God's work. We don't have to separate that out. And I think so many of us are just afraid if we go to a counselor, we're somehow discrediting God. If we take medication, we're not trusting God. And I think it's just this huge misunderstanding of how God created our bodies and our minds and our souls to work together and created community to meet us where we are. We don't tell folks with cancer, well, just pray. If you have enough faith. I mean, I guess people actually do tell people with cancer that, but typically also we tell them, go get treatment. And I'm not sure why we don't do that with mental and emotional health.
Your story like wrecks my heart that someone spiritual in your life that you look to as a leader would give you that type of advice, believing the best in he or she.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they felt ill-equipped, didn't know how to respond, wasn't sure what to do, dealing maybe with their own shame and guilt of what's going on in their life. However, I like any leader that's listening, I don't care if you're a school teacher, if you're a counselor, if you are a pastor, it's okay to say, I don't know how to help you right now. I'm going to send you to somebody that does.
Mm-hmm.
And I love you and I've got your back and I believe you. Like, I cannot tell you that phrase alone, how that has just brought so much comfort to me at some point when someone just looked at me and said, I believe you, Christy. I believe you. I don't know what to do. And I don't have an answer for you right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I know somebody that you can go talk to, or and I think we don't always have to have all the answers. And,
Right.
and part of the reason why, I started doing mental health coaching and I started doing biblical counseling because I realized that sometimes when I was in counseling appointments, they had so much red tape that the insurance company dictated and they weren't allowed to step out of that freedom. And I thought, what would it look like for me to cultivate, like a safe space for someone that I don't have to be confined by red tape and they can hear me and I can hear them. And so I love that mental health coaching space, biblical counseling space. I still believe in LPCs. So if you're an LPC and you're like, what I'm trying to say is there needs to be different avenues for different people, for different spaces and places. We need the LPCs. We need the mental health coaches. We need the biblical counselors. We need the psychologists. We need the psychiatrists. We all need to work together as a team. I just think it's so, so important. What I'm trying to say is mental health is complex, and there's so many reasons why we get into the dark holes that we get into. And the answer is Jesus. Out of that, people that love Jesus walking alongside of us it's just incredibly powerful.
Hey friends, so sorry to interrupt this amazing conversation, and I do hope you're enjoying it, but I just wanted to remind you of some fun new resources and opportunities that we have for you at The Holy Shift. You can find them under the new resources tab on the website. Now you'll notice several drop-down options there, including a Draw Near Dwell Well page where you can access a free workbook that you can download for the series. I've put some scripture, quotes, and art in there that might be helpful, as well as some journal prompts and Holy Shift type questions to explore. It's a totally free resource, as well as a rather robust resource list that I've made where you can learn more about each of these topics and practices that we're going to be exploring here on the show. And then I have an entire Draw Near Dwell Well online course available to you. This is a pre-recorded class that you can access instantly with a link and a password so that you can work through all this material in a slower, more convenient, and applicable way. I also get a lot more personal there, but I will tell you, it's a lot less like a course and more like a conversation. You're literally going to get me in my garden, on my porch, and in my studio, just sharing the raw and real of what I've been learning. I do have some snazzy slides, an enhanced workbook, and some fun new bonuses in that course as well. And I'm now offering what I'm calling shift sessions, which are just opportunities for us to chat one-on-one and determine if, how, and when you can begin to make a holy shift in your own life. So if you want to go deeper in your faith, but you're not sure where or how to start, or if you need some help muddling through a question you have or a challenging truth you've learned, you'll receive personal encouragement and practical guidance, and I'll help you clarify any mistheologies and misunderstandings of God's heart and will for you. And then if you really want to go deep, consider doing some one-on-one spiritual mentoring with me. I'd be honored to walk with you in your spiritual journey and encourage you as you learn how to live healed and whole. And if you want to help others draw near and dwell well, would you consider contributing to the Holy Shift? It helps support this work and enables me to continue to encourage others through this ministry. I operate as a nonprofit in partnership with the Women's Nonprofit Alliance, so all donations are tax deductible, and you can do this under the Contribute tab on the website. Again, all of that is available at theholyshift.org or via the links in the show notes. Okay, now back to our conversation. We've already talked a little bit about something that we get upside down. Do you think there's anything else, like other beliefs that we hold that really could benefit from a holy shift so that we could draw near and dwell well to God in this area? Like for me, I had not just a lot of shame with what other people would think about it, but I had shame that I was disappointing God because I wasn't able to have enough faith to feel better. I wasn't able to, on my own, save my marriage. I just felt like he was so disappointed. So on top of hiding what I was going through everybody else, there were parts of myself that I was hiding from God, which is just ridiculous, right? He can see it. But for me, that was a big component. I'm disappointing God if I don't fight my way through this. So for me, that was one. Are there any other things that you can think of, beliefs that we have, teachings that we've misunderstood that really could benefit from a holy shift so that we can draw near and dwell well here?
I had to have a holy shift come to Jesus about medication. And here's why. Now,
Okay.
I have a very unique perspective on medication, so please hear me out. Let me speak the full area of this. I believe in medication, and doctors are passing it out like candy too.
Mhm.
And so I think there needs to be a holy shift on both sides, both directions. First and foremost, for the superhero that's listening right now, that's like, I don't need medication. I can get myself out of this. I can pull my bootstraps up. There is some clinical perspective that people need to understand that my body was in fight or flight, which meant that my adrenaline and cortisol was so high and stuck up, like just in the danger zones, that unless I had a supernatural miracle from God, which I do believe he could have given me, there was nothing that was going to reshift that quickly. And so the medication for me was a rescue. It was your body needed to come down from that flight or flight, that cortisol. So it was an antidepressant, but it was also a rescue drug of, it doesn't matter, I'm not going to say them out loud because I don't want people to get stuck on that.
Right.
But I needed a rescue at that time as well. And it changed everything for me. It calmed my body down enough to where I could think, I could eat. That's the other thing. I couldn't eat. So I was rapidly losing weight. Chunks of hair were falling out of my head. If I didn't do something about that, Like that was a very dangerous path I was headed down.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, the medication was such a blessing. It was an
Mm-hmm.
incredible blessing. Now, it was a long-term commitment too. What people don't understand about antidepressants is you can't just take it for 2 days and then stop taking it, or take it for a month and then stop taking it. It is something that builds over time. So I had to make an 18-month commitment to an antidepressant. That's scary for a lot of people. They're like, well, why, what if I just, it's like, that's not the way it works. It builds your happy messengers back up over time so that you get to a point where you're not stuck in this fight or flight stage. So embracing medication for me at that point in my life was a holy shift. It was a scary shift. Now, I also believe that doctors don't know what to do with their patients that come in and say, I've just walked through a wretched divorce, and I also am dealing with adult children that are spiraling out of control about this. And so they're just sharing everything, and their heart rate is up and their cholesterol is high and they've got all these things. And then the doctor says, let me give you an antidepressant. Let's just, and instead of saying, hey, this is a holistic approach that we could take. Could you get into some counseling? Could you benefit from the local church? Could you, starting to bring in a holy shift of this medicine is not the answer. It is a tool. It is a tool that the Lord has given us, but it isn't going to get you out of that pit. And I remember when my primary care physician prescribed the medicine for me, and he said, Christy, here's the deal. This is what's going to happen. I'm going to give you this medication. And if you don't go home and do the work that we talked about at the beginning, if you don't go home and do this work and find out why you got into the place that you're in, you're going to come back probably every 6 months, and I'm going to have to just keep upping your medication up, until I've given you all I can give you. So here's my recommendation. Take the medicine because it's going to help you, but you really need to go home and do the work. And that changed me. I wish doctors would do that. I wish they would say, hey, this is going to help for a time being, but it's not the answer, and that's the holy shift I think we need to take.
Oh, that's so good. Yes. And same. So my cortisol was through the roof, hair falling out. I gained a bunch of weight because of the cortisol.
Happens.
Yeah. It was really, I gained a ton of weight in a very short period of time. In a really weird way. It was really bizarre. Like we kind of knew something was wrong because of the way it happened. But then because I had been pumping out the adrenaline and the cortisol for so long, my body was like, you know what? We can't do that anymore. And it quit making anything at all. And, some cortisol and adrenaline is good. Cortisol is what gets you out of bed in the morning. So you don't want a lot of it, but also you need some of it. And my body's like, nope, we're out. The gas tank is empty. We can't help you. So then all my adrenals were shutting down again. It was doing it with the too much cortisol and adrenaline. And then when I quit making anything good, we had a whole different thing. And I really hoped okay, as soon as I get out of this terrifying situation that was my marriage, it'll all get better. I didn't realize that there were these long-term medical things I was going to have to walk through. And I tried for a really long time just to do the trauma therapy, which has been amazing. That has been the godsend for me and the lifesaver for me. But along the way, my therapist was like, I really feel like you also could benefit from support on your adrenal system. Nothing's functioning over there. So I've never seen anybody work harder, on stuff, but I think your body needs support. And so I finally went to the doctor, and that's when they ran all the tests, and they're like, oh my stars. This is why you don't feel good. This is a problem. You're actually really close to complete adrenal failure here. And so they introduced some medication to help with that. I still fought off for a good number of months any sort of medication for the anxiety and the depression. And then when I finally brought that up to my doctor, I sobbed through the whole thing with shame because I'm like, I'm doing all the things and it's not better. And she was like, this is clinical, honey. This is in your body by now. What if we work it all together? And so she put me on something. I was weird about taking it, took it for a little bit, and then, oh, I'm good. And then recently got back on it. And I think it was actually God's work that I did because I'd had another loss in my life. And then I had eight tragedies hit people near me that I love. So, not my own tragedy, but just adjacent to me. And I'm very sensitive. So it was hard, for me to see that grief and walk with some of these folks with that grief. And I was having a hard time. So my therapist was like, I think we should go back on it. So I did. And thank goodness I did, because 2 weeks later, the flood hit. And I
Wow.
really don't know how I would have done without, like, I call it just like the bumpers. So I kind of ricochet between anxiety and depression when I'm having a hard time. Sometimes I'm okay. It's getting the better parts are getting longer, and that's great. But sometimes when it's bad, I'll ricochet between the two. And I feel like if you've ever been bowling and they put the gutter guards in for the kids so they don't just automatically go, I feel like for me, like the medication it's the gutter guards. I might still, kind of ricochet, but I'm not like boom gutter, on the depression side, or boom gutter on the anxiety side. It has kept me at least in the lane.
Mm.
And so that has been really helpful to me, but I still spiral with the shame of like having to do this. And actually can't believe I just shared that on the podcast. That was not intentional, but I guess that's what we're doing today. And so it does help. I think so many of us are afraid of that. I was afraid, I don't know if you were, I was afraid that I was going to be relying on it forever. You talked about your 18-month commitment to it. I should have made a longer commitment to mine. I do believe I'll be able to get off. But one of my big fears is like, if I start this, I'll have to do it forever. But that hasn't been your experience.
Oh, this is such a beautiful conversation. Your gutter thing, I'm gonna keep that with me forever. That
Okay.
is so powerful. It's so good. Yeah, and I think this is another thing about, like, clinicians, if you're listening, like, do a better job of explaining an antidepressant to someone so they understand it. I had to, like, figure this out on my own.
Mm,
But the reality is, if you do make the commitment to it, it doesn't have to be forever. And there are so many people that have successfully gotten off of antidepressants. I'm one of those people.
mhm,
And it's a process. It is certainly a process. You need to titrate off of it. You
mhm,
need to be prepared. You need to have your team and ready. You need to have, your counselor, your friends, and your people praying for you as you titrate off of it. But it can be done, and it is a
mhm,
beautiful experience. And for me, I am action oriented, right? But like I thought, okay, I need to commit 18 months to this. During this 18 months, I'm going to commit to body, soul, and spirit. And I'm going to work on all of these areas of my life and some of them I worked harder on. Like I would say that the actual body part of it, like health and nutrition and supplementation and that kind of stuff, that's actually come way later.
okay.
But it was my mental health and my spiritual health. I think of it as we like some good analogies today, right, Christine?
Mhm,
So, like, I like to think of it as a tricycle,
okay,
and so body, soul, and spirit. So if
okay.
I came rolling in on a tricycle and either one of my tires was flat, you'd be like,
Mhm,
"You look weird, Christy. That's not
mhm,
rolling very well." And I feel like that front tricycle wheel is the spirit side,
okay.
and if that part is rolling, it's leading the way, and it's why I feel so passionate about bringing Jesus into mental health, because I believe people can get well, but they
Mhm,
won't find actual true freedom without having the Jesus part in there.
right.
And so I really worked on my spiritual health. But again, I couldn't do that until I could think straight, until I could
Yes.
eat, until so I needed that medication to help me get to that place so that I could work on my spiritual health.
Mhm,
And then I was like in tandem, mental health, spiritual health, working at the same time. And then later started working on nutrition. I got off of caffeine. That was huge.
mhm,
Huge, huge, huge. And now I drink tea, which still has caffeine. But interesting part about that is the caffeine in tea hits you neurologically, where caffeine hits you cardiac, like from your heart standpoint. So sometimes when you get the flutter and the crazy, that part is what creates the anxiety. But the tea caffeine actually gives me like a boost of energy, and it doesn't make me jittery or fluttery or anything. So I mean, there's just so many things that we can do holistically to help our mental health.
Oh, that's great. That's so good. And I love all the analogies. My mind works better with illustrations and pictures. So that's really, really helpful. So I agree with you. Like the spiritual stuff, that is the front wheel of the tricycle. I think that's got to be the guide. But what I found out in therapy, I went from just regular like cognitive behavioral therapy to trauma therapy that was encouraged by an expert. And that was so helpful because I couldn't hear God until we could calm my nervous system down. And there wasn't any point in Crystal, my therapist. We should all just get on a first name basis with Crystal. She's actually been on the podcast. She's amazing. But
awesome.
yeah, so Crystal and I, like, we can't talk about anything until you can calm me down. Because if I'm, in fight or flight, my brain is offline. I can't talk to Crystal. I can't hear Jesus. So we would do these exercises to calm my nervous system down so that my body and my brain would be in a place where I could hear the Lord. And that is how my healing began. And that is, to this day, the most healing thing. Like, that Crystal has taught me practices. We do them together. I can do them on my own now, where I can actually calm my system down so I can connect with the Lord. And so that is why this whole series, Draw Near, Dwell Well, the whole thing, all of the episodes leading up to this episode and the episode on relational health, it's all been to convince people you get to care about yourself and you're supposed to steward your body. So that when we got to these two episodes are the whole point of this series, relational health and emotional health, because so many of us have suffered for so long thinking that we're supposed to warrior our way through toxic relationships or abusive relationships, that somehow that makes us more holy if we just suffer in the name of Jesus, which is not true. Please go listen to that episode. We talk about that big time. And also, like, with the mental health stuff, we think like, okay, again, slap a hope and a prayer on it and it's all going to be okay. And we are dying inside. People are, like, dying literally. They're getting sick. They're getting cancer. We talk about, like, if you've read The Body Keeps the Score and you've lived it, here are the ways that toxic relationships or depression and anxiety poison our bodies that God gave us, that we're to be stewarding. And it's setting off all the smoke alarms. It's setting off everything on the dash. And we're still like, oh, no. I'm going to put on my church dress and I'm going to pretend like I'm okay. And I'm going to squash this down and I'm going to keep going. And I think that's not going to change, Christy, until more people like you, and I'm so grateful for you. Thank you that you have the courage to share your story, because it is something to put it out there to the world and be like, hey, I've been diagnosed with severe panic and anxiety disorder. Here's what my panic attacks look like. I mean, that's a scary thing. And you did it. And your courage, I'm hoping and praying, is going to give other women listening the courage to seek the help that they need and to share their stories so we can take the stigma away. So this can be more of like a communal, shoulder to shoulder, women walking together, seeking the Lord and seeking wholeness and health in ways that we have always been afraid to do until now.
Amen.
I got too excited. I'm sorry.
That'll preach.
But one other thing, I'm not going to turn this into a counseling session. But one other thing is, sometimes the brokenness of this world is overwhelming to me. And I don't know. I have been accused of being a little bit of a Pollyanna my whole life. But sometimes I look around this world, especially, everything I've just gone through. And then I had 8 friends with tremendous losses nearby. And then the floods, and these beautiful children died, and these wonderful people died and lost their homes, and seeing that devastation day after day after day. I kept telling the Lord, Christy, this is great. Kept telling the Lord, it's not supposed to be this way. Like, I was informing him of that. It's not supposed to be this way. And God, being so good, he was just like, I know. But sometimes it is hard to live in this broken world, to be surrounded by the suffering, to be enduring some of the suffering. And then you and I chatted a little bit before we were recording about how long, oh Lord? About, David asking, how long, oh Lord? I was telling you, we sang that last week at church. I had to go to the bathroom and listen from the bathroom because I couldn't stop sobbing. Because how long, oh Lord? And the truth is, like, this is a broken world and we're broken people. And we're going to endure a lot of brokenness. And whatever ways we can steward our heart, soul, mind, and strength so we can love the Lord and our neighbors with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, if we can do those things, whatever practices we can put in place, the practices aren't the answer, Jesus is. But whatever practices we can put in place so that we can persevere in the suffering, so that we can connect with the Lord and experience his comfort, and then from that place offer comfort to others like you're doing with your work. I mean, there just isn't any other way to get through, I don't think. Am I being dramatic? as usual?
No, but one thing that's really like pinging my heart right now as you're speaking is healthy community.
Yeah.
And I don't think we're doing it right. I love the local church. I love the local church. I'm a part of a local church. And we are actively discussing and talking about how come everyone feels so lonely? How come we're not showing it? Like, so I'm in the middle of this deep dive, literally, of research, asking and looking and reading what did the early church look like and why are they so different than what we are right now? And it's mind blowing. It's mind blowing because it's like, let's be the early church. Let's be like the Acts church. Let's sacrificially give and let's cover each other and let's pray and let's worship and let's do it. But how come we don't look like that? How come there's more loneliness and depression and anxiety than ever was? And I do think the value of community and finding the right people to do life with. And I'm sure I need to go back and listen to your relationship health episode because I do think that we stay too long. I think that we make excuses and we do it in the name of, well, aren't we supposed to? Aren't we supposed to love unconditionally? Aren't we supposed to have grace? Aren't we supposed to? And the reality is Jesus was masterful with his relationships. Yes. And if you study his circles, if you study, the one he was closest to, and then then the next two, and then the 12, and then the 72, and then the crowds, and then the multitudes. And if you study that out and you really look at how they did life relationally and alongside of each other, that's another holy shift I believe we need to make is understanding relationships and healthy community and what does that look like. And honestly, the day I had to cancel with you, I was walking through a tremendous amount of loneliness. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't get out of bed for 48 hours. And I realized that I was pouring out so much and I was sticking my arm out because I went through some major betrayals in friendships. I've not rekindled that and haven't been able to find that community again. And here I find myself, go, 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 keep going, keep pouring out, keep doing it. And then it was like my body was like, you got to deal with this, Christy. Like you've got to deal with this. And it was ugly and it was gross. I don't want to go through that darkness again. However, I realized the relationship part matters. And so that was just another thing as you were talking, like, we got to get this right. We got to get these relationships right because that impacts our mental health tremendously.
Big time. Big time. Thank you so much for sharing that because I think loneliness is a huge driver for a lot of the relational unhealth. Like we're afraid of loneliness, so we're grasping for connection, whatever it might look like. And then also for the mental health and physical, like they're saying loneliness kills you faster than anything else. And I believe it. I believe it. Since my divorce, loneliness looks different. I will say it was lonelier in my marriage than it has been outside. Loneliness is something that I fight, especially in a new community, especially as, a divorced woman in the church world. Then there's not just a ton of young people in this zip code at all, I have found. But I am building this beautiful community and I feel more connected and more fulfilled than I ever have before because I am carefully choosing the people I'm in relationship with. And it's hard to do that if you've experienced a lot of betrayal, if vulnerability has always been weaponized against you. It is really hard to trust people with the deepest, darkest parts of you. But I've got a couple of girls here in Kerrville that I've snot cried all over, and they've yet to turn their face away. I'm not gonna cry. They've yet to walk away or shame me for feeling that way, and it is so healing because so many of us who have just experienced a lot of attachment wounds, the healing comes that way. But it isn't going to happen unless we're dealing with the emotions, the sense of betrayal, the grief that comes with these things, the sorrow. It's okay to grieve loss and death and betrayal. Like these things, they grieve the heart of God. When did we decide they don't get to grieve our hearts? And then to find people, holy people who will come alongside you and walk that with you and not turn away and not weaponize our honesty. I think loneliness is probably I know it is because I was doing some research too. It's endemic and it's eating a lot of us alive. So thank you that you shared that because I guarantee you that there are a lot of women listening to this, and I don't know if you're driving in your car or you're on a walk or you're mopping your floors. When she said lonely, how many of you were like, arm up? Yeah, I feel that. I feel that. And it doesn't matter if you're married or not. It's everywhere. So thank you for speaking to that, Christy.
Absolutely. And you said something powerful. You said carefully choose.
Mhm.
Carefully choose these
Mhm.
people. And I think sometimes we feel like we're stuck. We They're family, so they're blood, so we have to,
Mhm.
or but we get to choose these
Mhm.
relationships. And I think understanding our circles of friendships, understanding the expectations that fall in each one of those categories, understanding what we need. I'm working with a counselor right now, and she's like, be unapologetic about what you need.
Mhm.
Why are you so scared to say, I need this in an inner circle friend? Or like be unapologetic about it. And I
Mhm.
think the people pleasing comes in there that you got to deal with that. But the reality is that all matters.
Yeah.
And Jesus had expectations of those categories. So if he did, then we can too. And I think it's beautiful.
Yes, well, I've had to learn, and I talk about it in the relational health episode, that unconditional love is not the same as unconditional access. And I have to remember that because I'm one of those people, and it's the people pleasing part, but also I think just the way I'm wired, like I'm happy to give myself away if that helps somebody else feel loved. But we don't need to be giving away the most sacred parts of ourselves to people who don't recognize that as holy. And a lot of us have suffered much in learning that lesson. So, yeah, the screening process is hard. And I feel like sometimes people will slip through the profiling part. And then sometimes my pendulum has swung the other way where I'm still stuck with some of the hypervigilance. So I'm forever praying, like, Lord, I don't want what I've been through to harden my heart
Mhm.
against the right people, but I want to be wise. So help me discern. Help me discern who comes near and who comes nearer still. So it's a process and I'm still learning it. And if I ever figure it out, I'll let you know what the formula is, but I'm not there yet.
Well, and I think the other side of this is we can be as discerning and careful and prayerful about who we let in. But the reality is there is still a spiritual side of this. There
Mhm.
is still the evil one who wants to kill, steal, and destroy, and that sends in manipulators, sends in deceivers. And I can look back on some of my betrayals and relationships and go, how did I not see that? Like,
Yeah.
what the heck happened here? And one thing that my counselor has helped me, she's just like, sometimes there is just evil in this world that is a master deceptor that you're just not going to see it. So give
Mhm.
yourself some grace and release that. Did you learn something from this? Well, heck yeah, I did. Well, then there you go, And so it's like, okay, that's helpful too, that some things are going to slip through the cracks, like you said. And the reality is too, is we're all broken people
Mhm.
that if we don't deal with our brokenness, we are one step away of being used by the devil if we don't deal with that part. And that's always a wake up call for me.
Mhm.
I don't want to be used by the enemy. I know that all my bitterness, all my brokenness, I know that it can turn into a foothold quickly. And I could be used by the evil one if I don't deal with that stuff. And that to me is enough of a warning that it's like, I don't want any part of that, right? I mean,
Right.
scripture says, don't let the sun go down on your anger because it
Yeah.
gives a foothold to the devil.
Right.
And to me, that is like oh, it's not about bedtime. This is about
Yeah.
urgency, friends.
Yeah.
This is about dealing with it quickly so that it doesn't turn into bitterness, resentment, and something that the devil can use.
Yeah.
And to me, that's like, whew, okay, that's a wake up call for me.
Yes. And I recorded our intro before we got on here, and I talked about, hey, anger in and of itself is not sin, but it can turn into sin. And that's what we see in the scriptures are the ways like, hey, this is the way the enemy can come in and pervert and distort what could be a holy emotion. And when we let it fester, again, with my whole theory on like when we hide it, when we stick it somewhere dark so we can, enjoy it a little bit. I don't know if anybody's ever like made friends with their anger for a minute, a minute too long. But, sometimes if we allow that to happen, the enemy can totally come in or the bitterness will start to grow, the resentment will start to grow. For me, part of that was like the fear and anxiety about asking for what I needed. It was relationally based as well. I had always been taught that if I ask for what I need or I say that something hurts me, then connection was taken away from me. I was punished immediately. So being brave enough to still ask, and then if you're refused, let that inform you like, okay, this is someone who is either unwilling or unable to be in a reciprocal relationship, to be in a respectful relationship. So what am I going to do with that information? And some of us don't like the answer to that. And so we avoid that question as well. But yeah, unconditional love and unconditional access, they're totally different. And we do the best we can to discern. But like you said, like some people are masterful at hiding things. That's how some of us got in these situations. And some people are just broken. And sometimes their brokenness implodes all over us. And sometimes our brokenness implodes all over them. And yet, with the Lord's wisdom and the Holy Spirit's wisdom, He can guide us toward, hey, is this what love looks like? That was the biggest lesson for me relationally, was saying, I don't think this is what your love looks like. This is not how you define love. And if this isn't what love looks like to you, why am I letting this be what love looks like to me? Why would I do that? And so I think as we're building relationships with people and finding folks who will walk with us as we try to journey toward better mental and emotional health, we need to find the folks who hold the same definition of love and the same definition of healing and are really willing to be for us on that journey. And that's hard to do, but they're out there. I promise. I didn't believe they were, but I promise they are.
They are. They are. And knowing that and holding that boundary for yourself is so important. And then I think moving them out to a different category, you don't have to not see them ever again, right? But it's like they have a different level of access. Unconditional access to me is your inner circle, the one and your 1 and 2, right? That's unconditional. And then from there, nobody else receives that same type of access, and it kind of just chunks out from there. And I think for me, especially within loneliness, I was oversharing, or I was, putting everybody in a category they hadn't earned access to. And that's something that I got to work on, truthfully.
Yeah.
And I also believe in sharing and vulnerability, but I've learned that my oversharing gets me wounded and hurt with the wrong people,
Yes. Wow. I bet you and I could talk for hours and hours about that. Well, thank you for all that you shared. For everybody who's listening and like, okay, yeah, I really want to work on this. Is there one particular kind of next step application that you would offer? Like, what would you say to the people listening? Like, here's the one way you might think about starting on stewarding your mental and emotional health.
There might be some people on the other side that don't like this answer, but I truly, truly believe writing down your emotions, journaling, is a good, simple, free next step. Not everybody has access to a counselor or a mental health coach. So that alone can change everything. When I encourage people to journal, a lot of times they're like, well, there's like a few different types. There's the people that want it to be perfect and look perfect and have all their grammar and all the thing, and they want it. Please let that go. That's not what this is about. I've even had people say to me like, well, I don't want anybody to find this. Like if somebody found this, I would die. And it's like, okay, well then write it down in Morse code then. Write it down in bullet points that make sense to you, but get it out. Get it out. And so there is something so powerful in just answering this question. What emotion do I feel right now? And if you're not sure, look up the emotion wheel. You can find one on Google. Just like, what emotion do I feel right now? And if it's like anger, it's like, okay, why do I feel anger? If it's sleeplessness or if it's anxiety, okay, why do I feel anxious? And just working this out. What's one step I could do to not feel anxious anymore? Well, I'm realizing that I'm in an intense conflict with someone and I need to get some wise counsel on how to work through this conflict. Or I realize that I'm really worried about my adult children, or it's like identify it. Identify what is creating the anxiety. And there is a root cause. So it's like, do some free therapy on yourself by sitting with a journal in a quiet space, open up in prayer. God, I really want to get better. I don't want to stay stuck. I want to do something about this. Will you expedite this in this journaling session right now? Will you help me? And so I'm a firm believer in getting it's like your dark basement analogy. Once you put it down on paper, once you get it out there, it is now in the light. And then my next step would be after that would be to sit with somebody that you trust to speak it out loud, to speak it out. And that makes a world of difference,
Yes. Okay. So good. I didn't know we were going to go here, and I'm so glad we did. So I'm listening to you talk about get it out, and I'm thinking of what it was like for me toward the end of my marriage, and I was told, like, journal. And I'm like, I can't write this stuff down because if it ever gets found, and so I had an electronic journal that had a password on it that I could destroy with one button if I needed
That's
to.
amazing.
And so in some of my relationship recovery communities, they talk about doing this for a lot of the same reasons that you said. But what was helpful to me is, and here's another analogy, and this one's gross, but whatever. I mean, we've done everything else here today. Let's do this one. I think of kind of like food poisoning. You've eaten something nasty, or like someone hurts you and that goes bad inside of you. You've got to get that out. And like food poisoning will do us this enormous favor of recognizing like this is not good for us, and we are now going to get this out immediately, like violently probably.
That
And
is
so
so
like
good.
it's so good. Get it out, like let your body do its job and get out what cannot be in there. And so for me, because I'm a writer, I wanted to get it down pretty and say it right and maybe make it poetic. And I had to learn just to vomit the pain onto the page and lock it up with the password and delete it later if I needed to. But
That's so good.
yeah, and it was cathartic, it was therapeutic to do it. And to your point, I would vomit it out. And there's something about having to put words to what's going on in your brain. It would kind of calm some things down. It would kind of get it out. But also, I could look at it on the page, and a couple of things happened. One, I was able to identify patterns in my relationship that I had never been able to see. Like, here's the pattern. Here's what happens. I was also able to say, he did say that. No, I wrote it down. He did say that, so I didn't make that up. Or I did say that, so he's making it up that I didn't, or whatever. But also, I could see like whenever this happens, I feel desolate. I feel completely despairing. And then when I would have an appointment with Crystal, I would have vomited all of that out, and I could tell her, this, and this happened, and when it did and when it does, I feel like this. And I was able, an exercise that we did together was make a bullet point of the emotions I was feeling and why, and a bullet point list of things that were happening in my marriage that were irrefutable facts that needed to be acknowledged and looked at. And when you vomit, instead of it swimming around in your head, going nowhere, and you have to put it on paper, it helps you acknowledge what is real and true and going on so that you can then get the help that you need or communicate that to whoever is going to be walking with you. I'm so glad you said that. It was pivotal to me, and I hear it all the time in my recovery communities that they've got to write it down and get it out to even know where to go next.
It's a jigsaw puzzle up in here until it comes out.
Yeah.
And it's almost like once it starts coming out on paper, it's like the puzzle's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Oh. And then all of a sudden and until you can do that, it's just storing up. Like the body keeps a score, and it does need to come out. So I'm so grateful that has been your experience. And I have two. I have an electronic journal, and it's more of like my prayers and prophecy and things like that, so that I can look and be like, oh, wait, I had a dream about this. And then I can like look it up electronically. Whereas my journal is more of the raw, ugly things, my family jokes that they can't believe I turned out to be a writer because I have horrific grammar and horrific spelling. And it's that bad inside the journal too.
Oh,
but
sure.
it's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Just get comfortable with it being vomit, I think is a great way to say it.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it just needs to get out. And then we can like sort through the vomit to find that this is going badly, but sort through the vomit to get the little jigsaw puzzle pieces and see what the actual picture is. So yes, such a good practice. I'm with you. I highly recommend it. Well, I hate to bring our conversation to a close. I have really enjoyed this. I feel like people are really going to connect, but are there any last thoughts that you'd like to share before we end today?
I feel like somebody on the other side needs to hear the phrase that helped me so much. I believe you.
Yeah.
Where you're struggling, the anxiety you're feeling, you're not crazy. I think that is another thing. I felt so crazy. Oh, I felt so crazy, like certifiably crazy. Lock me up. I mean, that was part of the darkness of the thoughts. Like, my family's going to disown me because they think I'm crazy. They're never going to want to spend time with me again. And you're not crazy, friend. Anxiety is real, and it shows up and manifests physically in your body. And you can overcome. You can find freedom in all of this. Acknowledge it, get it down on paper, get it out, find the help that you need, and know that you can get free of this. And then you can turn around and help somebody else that is going through the same thing that you're going through. That is the beauty of trials, is that God will comfort you so you can turn right back around and comfort someone else with the same thing that you've been down and out about. And I think that is just such a beautiful purpose to our pain. So you're seen, you're valued, you're loved, you're not crazy, and I believe you.
Yes. Yes. We believe you, and God believes you too. Thank you, Christy. This was amazing. I'm so grateful for you. And I'm going to make sure and point people back to you and your work on the blog and in the show notes. So thank you again for being with us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today. I hope that you found that conversation helpful. I'm so grateful for Christy. And if you want to know more about her or connect with her, please check out the show notes. We've got all the links that you could ever want. You just go to the website at theholyshift.org to see those. And I just want to offer a couple of last thoughts. Like, if this episode hit home, I want to remind you of two truths. And I talked about this in the last episode as well. The two truths are: you are not powerless and you are not alone. On the powerless, there are programs, there are resources, books, counselors, mentors, communities who can help you take the steps you need to steward your mental and emotional health. I put a list of these together in a really long free resource list that is on the website and on the show notes. So make sure and download that resource list so you can have some ideas of places to start. Also, you are not alone or invisible. God sees you, and He's for you. And better yet, He's with you. He is close to the brokenhearted. If you are hurting, He weeps with you and for you. And He's also within you. He has promised His Spirit as your guide and comforter. And if you draw near and dwell well, He will guide and comfort you. I promise. Now, you might have to go and untangle some mistheologies. I know I did. And I talk about that in episodes 1 and 2 of the series, because so many of us have misunderstood God's heart and will for us. But He wants good for us. And He's called us to steward our heart, soul, mind, and strength. And part of that is by stewarding our mental and emotional health. So draw near to and dwell well with God, and let Him guide you toward healing and wholeness. And would you do me a favor? Would you send this to a friend? I know you've got someone who could really use this encouragement today, so send it to them. And if you're liking the show, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. It helps other folks find us, and of course, we love that. Now, I hope this podcast will continue to help us all shift our perspective on Jesus and learn how to live healed and whole by drawing near and dwelling well. Thanks again for joining me as I explore the upside-down kingdom of God as the right way forward in faith and life.